Hey, okay, Jeremiah here. So, about a week ago, I released a video after completing the Encore exam, and a couple people have asked me if I would make a similar video sharing my thoughts about the CCNA exam and talk about the tools I used to study. Someone also asked if I could share some of my study uh, tactics, just general kind of methodology. So I'll make a separate video for that too. All right, so CCNA, first off, so I did this about 6 or 7 weeks ago now. Um, Here's my exam report. And so I scored 947 out of 825 required to pass. So I think I did pretty good on it. And here is the individual. Zoom in a little bit more. There we go. The individual components. So, yeah, overall, I did pretty good. So I'm happy with this. So let's talk a little bit about the exam. Now, as I said in the Encore video, I'm not going to give away anything specifically on the exam. I don't want to run afoul of Cisco and whatever I signed when I took the exam. That said, I don't even remember what was on the exam. Like I took this 6 or 7 weeks ago, and then I went right into Encore. So I don't even remember what was specifically on the exam. Now we can take a quick look at the exam topics as delineated by Cisco if you want. But you could do that on your own time too. So no sense getting too far into that. Um, so anyway, what did I use to? Well, first off, let's talk about the exam. Um, I really, really enjoyed this test, and for a couple of reasons. So you might be aware if you've watched any of my other videos, or you see me in a discussion group. I left networking in 2013. I pursued a business. I took one of my sort of hobbies slash passions, something I had been doing. I started doing actually 20 years ago. And then in 2006, I started a business doing it part time when I could, which was really hard being a professional, network professional. I just worked a lot of hours. So when I could, I did it on the side. And then in 2013, after some changes in my life, which maybe we'll talk about in another video. I want to do some videos on some of the war stories of network professionals. Give some people starting off some things to be aware of might happen in your career, how to be a little more savvy maybe than I was. But so some change. There were some changes in my life and my career, and it seemed like a perfect opportunity to pursue, to take this thing that had been a part time at when I had time business and take it full time. So I've been doing that for 7 years now. So I've been over 7 years. I have been out of networking for a while. My life is changing again. My wife is pregnant, and we decided that. Just for many reasons, not the least of which is monetarily, it makes more sense for me to get back into networking. Now, it's probably going to take some time before I can get back to the financial position I was in before I left. But even so, even if it's 2 or 3 years of me kind of or more slogging there, eventually I'll get back there and it'll be worth it for my family. Um, so why do I like this exam? Well, for me, I took this exam as sort of a proof of concept. I was asking myself, can I still do this? Now, I haven't really done a whole lot of technical stuff in the meantime. I worked with people one on one as a coach, as a therapist. I sold online courses. Now, as part of that, I did teach myself PHP and JavaScript. So, and so, CSS and other web stuff. So I built a website and built some tools for the website. So I still, enjoyed technical stuff. I still play with Arduino, like that screen behind me lights up and makes patterns and stuff. That's all computer controlled. So I like technical stuff. I'm a technical kind of guy, but I hadn't done networking in years. So when I got into the CCNA, it was sort of a proof of concept. Can I do this? And I started off with the book. So you're probably aware there are two books, Volume 1 and Volume 2, 200-301, the official cert guide. And first off, I enjoyed the books. I think, were they written by different guys? No, same guy. Um, I well written. There's typos, but if you're paying attention, you're not going to get thrown off by them. Um, but well written, definitely. I'm trying to think of how to word this best, but my thought is that if you are getting into networking, if you're relatively green, getting into networking, this really is a great starting point. Or if you've been, kind of on the periphery, maybe doing a help desk job or maybe you've been primarily desktop or server stuff, and now you want to move into the network stuff. This is it's a great way to do that. These two books and this test, it covers a broad range of topics. Let's take a look at them real quick. I don't want to go super in depth. Network fundamentals. So you're talking about routers, layer 2, layer 3, talking about wireless. Some basics of design, different types of cables, and power over Ethernet. So, so from a networking standpoint, you're getting into everything at a high level. But when you finish this exam, and if you do well on this exam, I feel that if I was a hiring manager, and I have been in that position many, many times, that if someone had this new CCNA exam, the cert under their belt, I would feel pretty confident that they were in a good position to be in a junior level position within a networking organization. So a junior level engineer, or maybe even sort of maybe tier 2 NOC position, something like that. So it covers a lot of stuff, but it's really positioning you well, and I think it's a good foundation, and it's really going to position you to kind of jumpstart your networking career. Now, most of this stuff, well, let's see here. Most of it I was already very familiar with. Let me try to get myself in frame a little bit better here. Like I said, so I'd done this for years. I first got my CCNA in 2000, so 20 years ago. Even at the time, though, I was still doing primarily Windows stuff. I was a server guy for quite a while, Windows servers. And eventually, I think it was around 2004, I finally actually officially got a job in networking, and did that until 2013. So I had done most of this stuff, like especially the core networking stuff, routing, switching, stuff like that. Access lists. I've done thousands of access lists, interface configurations. I've done thousands and thousands of interface configurations, VLANs, VTP, span tree. Like I've done all that stuff, tons of it. So that was all easy. Automation and programmability. This was from a networking position, all new to me. Now I've always been a bit of a, coder. I taught myself BASIC when I was, 12 on my Commodore 64. And I've always written code since. In fact, I will say that it's funny because one of the ways, it's almost like it bums me out in some weird sense that this is becoming such a core part of networking, because one of the ways I've really distinguished myself in my earlier career was by doing scripting and automation. One of the last things I did before I left my last position was I built a tool in Perl that walked our network and checked all the interfaces. It used SNMP, so I would query the SNMP MIB. I would take that data, I would parse it in Perl, and I would build a database of all the interfaces in our network and all of the VLANs on every interface. Now, we had literally thousands of VLANs. It was not the best design, but it's kind of, anyway, not important. But so we had thousands of VLANs. Some of them were trunked across multiple states and multiple data centers. Some of them were local. And my tool, built all in Perl, would walk the network, figure all that stuff out, and then you could query the database and it would give you the path of a VLAN through the network. So it was a really nice little tool. But that was one of those things that, it's just one example of ways that I was able to really distinguish myself in my career because I enjoyed coding, and most of my peers didn't even know where to begin. So it kind of bums me out that now everybody has to do that because I'm not special anymore. So security. I used to be very familiar with security stuff, although security it changes all the time. So a lot of that was new. Um, anyway, I'm kind of getting rambling a bit here. My point is that I really had a lot of experience with at least 50%, probably more like 60 to 70% of the stuff on the exam. So because of that, reading the book was pretty easy. It was pretty much a review for me. Um, and the exam itself was pretty easy. So, but I'm not trying to make this sound like, oh, look how special I am. I just want to be clear that it's really not a fair comparison since most people are not doing their CCNA with as much experience as I have had. Now, if you're just getting into networking, this is a great place to start. I spent a couple weeks studying and then I took the test. I think if you're just starting off, reading these books, going through and really practicing what's in the books. There is a lot of information here, and if it's new to you, it's going to take a while. So I wouldn't be surprised if you have to set aside 3 or 6 months, to work on this. And I'm not trying to. I don't want to bum anyone out who was thinking that this is going to be super quick. If you're experienced, this can go pretty quick. If you're just starting off, it's going to take you a while. But I want you to know that when you're done, you're going to have a really good foundation in networking. And I don't know how CCNA has been perceived over the past decade since I've kind of been out of it. I really haven't hired people at the CCNA level in a very long time. I was mostly hiring professional and IE level people. So I haven't really interviewed and, thought a whole lot about CCNA in a very, very long time. But if I was a hiring manager today and kind of knew about this exam, this would have a lot of merit in my view. So I really think this is worth pursuing. Okay, so that being said, let's take a quick look at reading the book. Obviously, that's always my number one tool for studying. If you want to do something like the CBT nuggets, I like CBT nuggets. I did not look at them for this test. If you're just starting off, it would probably be good just to get another perspective. Sometimes just reading the book isn't enough. What I did use, however, let's come over here. So I used the Bosun NetSim lab simulator tool thing. Now this is expensive. This is like $150 or $180. It's expensive, but I really did like it, especially if you're new to Cisco and you're just, you're trying to get in here, get started off. This is going to get you on the command line. It's going to get you used to doing the commands. Now, so this is just the CCNA, okay? There got to be, 200, 150 labs here. It's way overkill. So I have two big frustrations about this tool. One, excuse me. The first thing is it's just too much. It's too much. I mean, you would spend weeks and weeks going through. And maybe that's okay if you have the time. Maybe that's okay, but it's kind of disjointed. It looks like some of the labs are intended to build on themselves. So it's kind of like taking you through. You start off at 0, and the next lab you build a little more, and you build a little more, and you build a little more. So it looks like at some point they built a comprehensive CCNA lab group of scenarios that were all interconnected and built on each other in a coherent way. And then at some point they just started adding random labs, and now it's all jumbled up. And so you'll get a random lab, and then the next one seems to be related to something you did 4 or 5 labs ago. So they seem like they really are trying to go for quantity over quality. I'm not really sure, why you need to do some of these. They have some of these labs. They got 4 or 5 versions of the lab. why you need to do them over and over and over again. There is benefit in learning to, type out all the commands. There definitely is some benefit to it. It's funny when I sat down to do this, and you sit down and just my fingers remembered so many of the commands that even though I hadn't thought about them in years, my fingers just remembered them because I just typed them thousands and thousands of times over the years. So I like it. I liked it for me, for getting kind of back into it and building up my confidence a little bit because I had not done it in so long. I like it for someone who is just starting out and really does need to get some time on the command line and probably is not going to have access to lab gear. If you're someone who works in the field already and you're kind of doing the CCNA as a way of formalizing your experience, you're probably not going to get a whole lot out of this, just to be honest. So, but I liked it. I liked it. And then now one of my favorite study tools of all time is the Bosun Exams. I love Bosun Exams, and for the CCNA, their practice exams are just spot on. Just spot on. Now, it's not a brain dump, right? So you're not seeing questions that are on the exam. Good, because that just pisses me off. But it is really, they've done a really great job of capturing this style of Cisco questions, the type of Cisco questions, and the material that you need to know. After when you get this, you get 3 exams, A, B, and C. Each exam has 102 questions on it, so there's a total of 306 questions within the package. Just when I opened this up, there was an update, by the way, so they're actively updating it. And just spot on. So the way that I always recommend doing this is, let's bring this over here. When you do one of these exams, I recommend doing it twice. So there's 3 exams, A, B, and C, and I recommend doing only one per day, especially the first time through. So on one day you'll do A, on another day you'll do B, and it's going to take you a couple of hours to get through this, because the way I recommend it is you go through, you do the questions. Let's see if I can get this right. Which of the following Cisco lightweight AP modes can form a mesh when enabled on multiple APs? A mesh. I don't know. Let's say bridge. Show answer. Hey, I was right. Okay, so when you select your answer, you hit show answer, it's going to show you the answer. Fantastic. But it's also going to give you a really detailed explanation as to why that answer is the right answer. It's going to tell you where they got their information from. Oftentimes, it's like this one. It happens to be right out of the cert guide, right out of the book, right? But many times it's not. Many times they're pointing at Cisco documentation. I remember there was something that linked to a NSA document about security policies or something. So, if you have time, it's great to go read those. So whether you get it right or you get it wrong, read these explanations. You're going to end up reading a lot. There's a lot of material. But this makes it a whole other tool for learning, not just a review. So you go through once, do the practice test where you read each of the explanations. I recommend you do each exam that way, A, B, and C, and I also recommend that you take at least a maximum one per day. Once you've done that, so that it gives your brain time to digest everything, which is such an important concept that most people don't necessarily honor. The idea that your brain takes time to digest information. I'll talk about this in study strategies video, the importance of understanding how your brain works and using that knowledge to maximize your ability to learn as quickly as possible and retain as much as possible. But anyway, and then once you've gone through each of the 3 exams, then go back a second time and do the exams again. At the second time, I usually do 2 a day, so I'll do A and B on one day and C on the next day. Um, and that second time, you really should be able to get a very high score. If you can get a very high score, 900, 950, then you're ready for the actual exam. For this Bosun CCNA, it's not true for all their products, but for the CCNA, definitely true. If you can get a high score on the practice exam, you're going to get a high score on the actual exam, most likely. But that's only if you're getting that high score on your second time through. If this is your third or your fourth time through the exam, you're going to get a false reading because your brain, whether or not you intended to, has started to memorize the questions and answers. And so what you're going to find is you're not actually picking the answer because it's the right answer. You're picking it because you remember it. And that's can be really bad. It could help you with the exam. Excuse me. But more than likely, it's going to hurt you. So I only ever do these exams twice. Once to go through very slowly, take 2 or 3 hours sometimes to read all the answers, and then a second time to just cement that information, make sure I actually got it. So those are the tools that I used. The book, the Bosun practice exam, and the Bosun NetSim. The other thing that I did was there's a bunch of stuff in these books that you just kind of have to memorize. I kind of feel like, at a certain point, memorization. Back in the day, right? Back in the day, I remember for my Cisco ACRC exam, Advanced Cisco Router Configuration, you had to memorize commands, and they weren't multiple choice. They weren't even in a simulator with contextual help. No, you had to memorize the command, and during the exam, it would say, what command would you enter to, enable this feature with these settings? And there'd be a little text box, and you would have to type the command in exactly. And I remember I was on an airplane once. I was flying somewhere, and I had this stack of flashcards, and I'm just trying to memorize hundreds of Cisco commands, something that's silly, in my opinion, because you have help, you have documentation. Why memorize all this stuff? So I'm not big on memorization for these. I'm not impressed when someone memorizes all these little facts and figures about a technology. I am impressed if you understand how it works, why it works, how it interoperates with other technologies. That's what you need to be a successful engineer. And knowing where to look when you need to know, well, what's the default timer for this? Or, what's the default whatever setting for something, that's all out there. You can look that up, but knowing how and why things work, how they work together, that's what makes a successful engineer. So I get a little frustrated. If I have any frustration with this exam, there is quite a bit you have to memorize. It's all in there, things like the HSRP, MAC addresses, and the timers and stuff like that. You got to know. You got to know all that. You got to know the IPv6 network numbers, multicast numbers, all that stuff. You got to be able to do subnetting. I do think there's value in subnetting. I'm not trying to say that, but there's a lot of stuff that you have to memorize that some of it there's value in, some of it not so much. So, but if it's in here, you better know it. So anyway, that was the kind of point that I was getting to, was that once I'd gone through the tests, the practice labs, the books, I did go back through the books, and I made lists of all the things that I needed to memorize, and I sat down and memorized those just in an afternoon. It's not a big deal. And then, in the morning before I took the test, I pulled those sheets back out, went back through them, and looked through them again. So I'm not usually big on notes, but when you have to memorize all kinds of crazy stuff like that, I will take some very specific notes. So I did that for this. Okay, that's really it. There's not a whole lot to it. This video is kind of long, but There's really not that much to it. It's a great exam. I just love it because I really do think it's preparing you. It's giving you such a good base of knowledge. And the exam, when I took the exam, the questions I felt were structured in a way that really did test you in a good way, tested that you understood the information. It wasn't just about memorizing, numbers and facts and figures. It really did a good job, as good as you can in that kind of testing environment, to test your ability to understand what you had been studying. So I like the exam. I like the material. I think this is a great certification. Those are my thoughts. I hope you found some of this insightful. All right, this is Jeremiah. See you next time.